Good evening. I'm Harry Fisher, Chairman of the Board of Estimate and Taxation. This is a regular meeting of the, of the board. It's Monday, November 18th. It is 6:35, and I'm calling the meeting to order. Would everybody stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We realized today that there was something we should be adding to the agenda. I'll take a motion to add FI3, which has been passed out. And I let everybody know, I think that this was going to be added, but I'll take a motion to add that to the agenda, please.
I'll make a motion to add an agenda item under new business for the authorization of $32,000 to hire a search firm.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. That takes 2/3 vote, so I'm going to take a record vote just to make sure it's all kosher. Mr. Alfano.
Yes.
Mr. Kalb.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Ms. Jansen, yes. Mr. Weisbrod.
Yes.
Ms. Moriarty.
Yes.
Ms. Tarkington.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Vasiliotis.
No.
Mr. Selps.
Yes.
Ms. Aurora.
I'm a yes.
Mr. Deschamps.
Yes.
And Mr. Alcheck.
Yes.
Okay, so that passes. We will add that to the agenda. My discretion is it'll come up under non-routine applications. Okay, next up is the assessor's report.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Chairman and fellow members of the BET. I'd like to present the assessor's report for November 2024. Currently, we just finished pricing out your motor vehicle supplement, which is on the grand list of 2023. Basically, that's all motor vehicles that have been registered since October 1st of 2023 to the end of September of 2024. That and the second half of your real estate bills will be going out mid-December, as they usually do, and they will be due, I believe, February 3rd, because February 1st is a Saturday. The 2024 grand list, we're currently working on the real estate and the personal property portions. We have yet to receive the motor vehicle list, and I know that is going to be of concern because we're going to start valuing motor vehicles differently this year, but we should get it in the next week or so. And once we get it, we'll get on it right away to try to figure out exactly how that may impact the totals on the 2024 grand list. As far as litigation is concerned, we had one commercial property and one residential property withdrawn, tax appeal withdrawn. We settled 2 commercial tax appeals for a tax loss of $17,538, and then we settled 2 residential appeals, and we had a tax loss of $77,082. Anybody have any questions for me?
Any questions? Take a motion to accept the report? Oh, you
I
have a
move-
question?
No,
I'm
I
sorry.
move that we accept the assessor's report.
Moved by Leslie Tarkington. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Olchek to accept the report. Is there any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, that's accepted 12-0. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the requests for budget adjustments. First up are the routine applications, which I'll simply read out. And if anybody wants to take one off, let me know. SE3, the first selectman, $1,439,670.65, an additional appropriation toward a settlement of Massarides versus the town of Greenwich et al. HT1, the housing trust, $414,350 as a transfer from Fund which fund?
It's a sewer project, or a drainage project that was approved in the 24-25 budget.
It's from the allocation to the Housing Trust, but it's in our accounts to a drainage project that was approved in the current year budget. PD2, Police, $61,874, approval to use. This is 911 funds to use for salaries in the dispatch center. FD2, the Fire, this is simply changing the funding source of $1,265,000 due to the action of the RTM to turn down the bonding resolution. So with that, I would move approval of the routine items.
And I'll second that.
Moved by myself, seconded by Leslie Tarkington. Any objection to unanimous approval for this? Seeing none, that's 12-0-0.
So do I read this one?
Thank you.
So the next item we have
Yep,
is
please.
a non-routine item. It's for the Department of Public Works, too, and it's for release of conditions of $3 million on the North Street Bridge. Have a second?
I will second that.
So,
have-
do you want to report?
Sure. Report of the Budget Committee, please.
So report of the Budget Committee. Considerable discussion centered on the Public Works request for release of conditions on $3 million for the North Street Bridge project. Jim Michael and Gabriella Sarcosta-Cohe reported on the two public hearings held in April and October 2024. Project receipt of inland wetlands approval in late August, and provided a timeline and cost estimate currently of approximately $3.7 million for the project. In the last couple of months, after the BOS presentation by two neighbors of the North Street Bridge project, the project timeline had been reduced from 2 years to 10 to 12 months. Mr. Michael emphasized the urgent nature of the project, explaining that delays could result in indefinite road closure if the bridge condition deteriorated. We also confirmed that while the bridge weight limitation of 4 tons is posted, there is only self-enforcement. The North Street Bridge construction schedule is set for spring 2025, with a North Street road closure planned for 12 weeks, beginning approximately June 9th, 2025. The request for proposal includes both a per-day, and that would be the request for proposal for the construction project, includes both a per-day incentive for reopening as well as a per-day penalty to the contractor for delays beyond the reopening date. Committee members expressed concerns about flooding impacts, particularly in the upstream of the bridge, as there is no engineering calculations to date. The placement of the bridge, street, or dam now downstream, not upstream, as approved by the inland wetlands, and minimal traffic management or diversion plan with Public Works where possible, provided mitigation explanations. The reason for the condition and the 4 individual sections of the conditions as approved were read. In addition, as requested by a member of the committee, and because the engineering study is not complete and available for review, the Public Works agreed to attend the BET Budget Committee December meeting to discuss the report. The motion for release of conditions passed 3-1, and it passed.
310.
Oh, 310.
Right. Okay, sorry. All right, are you moving this forward?
So I moved.
Move it forward, I'll second that.
I thought you already did.
Okay, sorry. That's
But
right, we
happy to
did.
do it again.
That's right, I'm sorry, I'm confused this evening. We have the Deputy Commissioner, Mr. Michael, with us, and we have Gabrielle, and I'm sorry I haven't practiced your name, but I think everybody knows who you are. Do you have any remarks for us ahead of time, or would you just like to take any questions? Okay, does anybody have any questions they'd like put forward to them?
So I might have a question.
You have a question?
I have a question.
Okay.
If I can find my question. I wanted to ask about the bridge at Hillside and Route 1. One of the reasons that you're anxious to move this ahead was because of the timing of that project. So can you explain, is the state ready to proceed with that Route 1 bridge construction? And it's my understanding when I went to their website that it appears there are open and yet to be determined approvals from the Connecticut Deep and the Army Corps of Engineers. But you also mentioned that you thought they're ready, but the website says the last discussions with the town were in January 2024. Can you give us any update on why you think that's ready to move ahead and putting the pressure on moving ahead with this project?
So I periodically will check in with the representative from the state that I have contact with on this project. Asking them the question of, has the timeline changed? And their targeted timeline, they understand they're still waiting on getting a few final approvals for their permitting, but their timeline is to start construction in the spring of 2026. So that's about a year and a half from now. So they feel, and typically the permits, I believe they've submitted for their permits and they're waiting for that. The typical review time for that is about 6 months. So based on that, I would assume that they will be ready for that timeframe.
So, on the website, it does say that they submitted for their permits in 2021. There's no update to that. So obviously 6 months is long gone. But there are 4 different areas of permitting that don't seem to be updated in that, on their website for this particular bridge project.
Well, it's a DOT project, and that's the information I've been given from their staff. I think the last time I talked to them was about 3 months ago, so.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yeah, Mr. Alcheck?
Thank you, Harry. First off, I want to say thank you to DPW for being responsive to the community and to coming up with an alternative plan, an accelerated plan. And I believe that you listen to the community input. So thank you for that. My question, and I'm not sure you're really the right ones to answer this question, but it involves enforcement of the 4-ton limit, which Mrs. Tarkington brought up a moment ago. And, I understand that you may not be in a position to enforce that, but is there someone else in Greenwich that can help with that, particularly during the construction period? It would seem that it would be a good thing to make sure that trucks that are not supposed to be going over that bridge are in fact not going over it.
Yes, so we've had some conversations with the police department about this, and they continue to monitor the area. So I guess they can't have somebody there 24/7, so that's the information, but they do work with people to try and prevent them from utilizing that.
But is there anything else that we can do? Maybe it's a camera, or I don't know if there's an alternative that we can use to enforce that rule, or is the only thing really just putting a police officer there and monitoring it that way?
There, to the best of my knowledge, there isn't any enforcement ability utilizing alternative means other than just physically having a police officer witnessing it and pulling somebody over due to that. There hasn't been any legislation done that allows that for that type of use.
And will there be police, or at least a police officer on the scene during construction? So maybe that'll be sufficient.
Yeah, during the construction timeframe, especially at the beginning of this portion, There will be police on hand while they're working during the day to do that, so that will probably be very helpful. And then the construction will start with a full closure in the summer period. Traffic won't be utilizing the bridge at that point because there won't be a bridge. And then after the summer period, there'll be a new bridge, which would then not have the weight restriction, so.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Fasciotis?
Jim, a lot, I know discussion has been revolving around this proposed sheeting restriction that apparently has been added to this project. Is this a temporary restriction? And if so, what's the plan and the timing for removal of it? And also, I understand what the purpose is downstream. It's to kind of move the flow so that it will go downstream. Does it actually worsen the conditions for a flooding upstream, in your opinion, or not? I guess those are the questions I have.
Okay, so the sheeting is a requirement to meet our permitting requirements. Permits require us to not have a negative impact both downstream or upstream. In order to do that, we cannot make conditions worse in either direction. Therefore, we have to maintain a structure opening that replicates what we currently have until such time as we're able to make improvements downstream to lower the water surface elevation that would allow us to allow more water downstream. We have started doing a study to determine what the necessary improvements would need to be. We've got a preliminary draft that has been forwarded to us that we're reviewing right now. The rough estimate for all the downstream improvements is about $30 million worth of downstream improvements. A significant amount of them are on private property or property outside the jurisdiction of the town. So based on that, that restriction will need to remain in place until such time as those improvements are made or enough of those improvements are made that a portion or most of the restriction could be removed. That way we're not doing negative harm on those people downstream or, and the restriction will keep the existing conditions so those people upstream are not impacted by this project.
I guess I need clarification of that because upstream, I'm hearing that there has been flooding due to restrictions in the bridge as it currently is. So are you saying that this will just maintain the current conditions and that these people will still be flooded to the same extent that they already are?
It will maintain the current situation, yes. So it's not making it any worse than what currently exists.
Okay.
Anybody else? Ms.
Jim?
Tarkington?
So, I'm sorry, so that means under the bridge, but currently, water goes over the bridge in major storms, and now the bridge is going to be longer and 2 feet higher. So how does the calculation of this address this issue where the neighborhood is not, I wouldn't call it relieved, but things are improved by the water going over the bridge, which happens, and then North Street is closed. So is this being addressed, the water that's currently going over the bridge? And how is that impacting? Because now it seems like the water issue will be exacerbated in the neighborhood by this higher and much longer wall.
So the water that goes over the bridge now will be able to go under the bridge, under the new bridge, but over the restriction, the sheeting restriction. So the sheeting restriction will only be as high as the existing bridge. The new bridge will be higher than the top of the new sheeting. So when water gets to that point where it would have gone over the roadway, it will go over top of the restriction and continue downstream the same way that it did before, and the same amount of water that was able to go over top of the road will be able to go over top of this restriction and move downstream. So there won't be any negative impact on those people upstream because of this restriction.
Well,
Go ahead, Ms. Fossey. Yes, go ahead, yeah,
okay,
sorry.
I just wanted to follow up. It's no impact, it's no additional impact. They still have the same impact they have as of the current bridge, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to also get back to the Route 1 project. You indicated that your understanding is that the spring of 2026, this project has been planned since 2010, is that correct?
Their project?
Yes, their project, the state project.
It's been going on for quite some time, yes.
Okay. It was just very difficult in getting a sense of the current timing. So we actually had some correspondence from the Project 56305 team. And basically, their timeline, they couldn't give a construction start date because of the permitting issues. And then they would need to finalize contract documents, advertise the project, bring it to bid, contract mobilization efforts, et cetera. So considering that this project has been going on from 2010, do you feel that they're going to really meet that 2026, spring 2026 deadline based on your understanding of how the state works, realistically?
I actually do feel like, from everything they've been telling me, they're in a similar situation as we are with the condition of that bridge and their concerns with the condition of that bridge and wanting to make sure that it moves forward. So they are at a point where they're looking to move this forward. We've gone, I've traveled the journey with them on this project and seen some of the highs and lows that they've experienced in doing their design. They've had some funding concerns. Those funding concerns were alleviated a few years ago, and so they're able to move this project forward. I think it's going to meet that time frame from every indication that I have, so.
And just another follow-up question on the drainage improvement. Could you identify the drainage improvement projects that are necessary to remove the restriction? I mean, I know you said it's a $30 million project, but are there specific things that can be done to remove the restriction? And if so, what are they? I mean, the whole project doesn't have to be done to remove the restrictions, does it? Or is that or am I mistaken?
Each of the there's multiple projects downstream of this. They include some modifications to some structures within Millbrook. There's some modifications to the dam that's on the high school property, potentially some modifications to the channel that's on the high school property. The bridge at Old Church Road, some channel improvements between Old Church Road and the high school property. The culverts underneath Route 1, next to Hillside, a separate project that would need to be happening next to the hillside, the other side of the bridge.
But would all of those have to be done before you could remove the structure, or are there certain things that can be done to remove the structure? I guess the concern that I hear voiced most commonly is the upstream neighbors basically having an issue with the continued flooding.
I understand what you're saying, and
Yeah.
to completely remove the structure, we would need to do pretty much all of those items. There may be modifications that we can make that would allow us to increase the opening along the way, and that's kind of the way we've designed this. Is it utilizes a sheeting process where we might be able to cut portions of that sheeting out to make the opening bigger, that would then allow a little bit more water downstream if we made some improvements downstream, and that could potentially slightly improve it upstream of there. I think the one thing that I will also try to just make a statement here is, even if we were to do everything downstream, remove this restriction, people that are located upstream of this and downstream of this are still within a flood zone and will still get flooding on their properties regardless of what we do. Even if we made all these improvements, there's certain areas upstream of this that's only gonna see about a 1 to 2 foot change in the flooding levels of their
Well, but that's significant. I mean, that can be
That can be
significant.
significant. I don't
And-
disagree, but.
And not all of them are in the floodplain. There are portions of it, but not all of them, from what I understand. But again, maybe FEMA needs to update their floodplain drawings. But again, 1 to 2 feet is significant to some people. So, I
Right.
mean,
No,
it
no,
could be
I'm-
the difference of wiping out, a floor or not. So I just wanted to know what the timing is. And do you anticipate, just to get ahead of ourselves on the budget process, putting monies in the budget next year for some of these modifications?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Phelps?
So I just wanted to follow up on Ms. Vasiliotis' questions. Obviously, $30 million is a significant number, and if I understood your prior remarks, some of the improvements are on private property, is that correct?
Correct.
And how will those be accomplished? I mean, do you go to the landowners and say, you have to do this, or is this a question of appropriating the land? How will you be able to accomplish the improvements that are necessary on private property?
So with any project, we always look at what are the impacts, how could we improve these things? What's the benefit to both the private property? We will meet with those private property owners, try and discuss with them to determine, is this something that could be accomplished or not? What the benefit to them would be. Ultimately, we want to make sure that it's a benefit to both parties. And if we can work with them to do that, that's the process. Is it much more challenging sometimes when it's involving private property? Yes, because it does require the permission of those private property owners.
And what is your anticipated timetable for being able to complete these downstream improvements, if you have one?
It's, we don't really have one at the moment. It's gonna require significant funding, and that will, to make all these downstream improvements, so that's.
And do you have, will there be engineering work that you'll have to do to figure out how to site them and that sort of thing, or is that work already been done?
We're doing some of the initial conceptual work, but there will be a significant amount of engineering that will be needed for each of the individual projects along the way to determine what that scope would be and so forth, so, yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else first before I recognize Ms. Target and Ms. Aurora?
Thanks, Harry. Thank you, Jim. I just wanted to ask just a general question. I know when we first saw this project, a few months ago, or maybe even last year, the concerns that really got highlighted were, one, the traffic plan. It looks like that's been addressed. I know there was a timeline which was lengthy. Looks like you've shortened the overall construction timeline for this project, so that's good. And then I know and I also live in this D11 in this district, so I've had some folks call me on this. But I know some of the community members that are immediately kind of in this area had some concerns around, flooding both, or maybe potential impacts from both upstream and downstream. Do you have a sense of where the community is with the new plan that's being proposed? I know you, of course, are doing your best to try and alleviate some of the concerns that were raised, but do you have a sense, or have you tapped into the community, that, especially the individuals that were highlighting some of these concerns or were the voice of the community? Do you have a sense if they're happy with kind of where we are? Is there something that's not being addressed, could be addressed better? Would they want to see this project moving forward as is? Do you have a sense of any of that, or where
Yeah,
are we on that?
I mean, based on the public meeting we had in October, we got a decent amount of positive feedback about the project. The shortened timeframe, the lessened impact to the properties is better. The fact that we're not looking to have it coincide with the Route 1 project is better. Is there still some concerns about the drainage piece? I will definitely say yes, there's still some concerns about the drainage piece. I think the big thing that we've tried to dwell on is, we understand that, we're trying to work on that concurrently with this project. But this bridge is a bridge that I think the one sentiment we've heard from everybody, including members, pretty much every member of this board and the public is, it's a bridge. We know it needs to be replaced. We know we want to replace it. And that's the part that needs to get done. So that's what we're trying to focus on, making sure that we can get the project completed in a the least impactful to the neighborhood as possible, in a, timeframe, and then look at other ways that we can set it up so that moving forward, we have the ability to, make other improvements that would benefit the community.
I mean, and if it's okay, Harry, just, how are you going to assess the impact on drainage specifically? I mean, is there something you can do before the fact? Does it make sense to have I understand what you're saying, if something happens along the way or if something gets discovered, you're going to, of course, want to address it maybe in a future year. Is there any way to kind of assess what that impact could be? Can we do a study beforehand? Is there a study being done? How are we planning for this, especially the negative impact of upstream and downstream, especially the immediate neighbors?
Yeah, I mean, we've done a study upstream of the bridge that we completed in March of 2023, I believe. And then we're currently in the process of doing a study from the bridge downstream to Long Island Sound. That's giving us recommendations. We're hopeful to have that completed in the near future. And then we'll be going back out and letting the public know the results of that study, providing that information, putting together budget requests for making some of those improvements moving forward. So that's kind of in our overall planning.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, who's that? David? Mr. Weisbrod?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Under the likelihood that the Route 1 project starts in spring of 2026, what would the consequences be of not proceeding now to complete this project before the commencement of the Route 1 project? In other words, what would the world look like in Greenwich if we had these two projects going simultaneously?
Traffic would not be very friendly in that neighborhood. We know that the Route 1 bridge, their plan is they're gonna have Route 1 down to one lane in each direction, pretty much from Indian Field Road to Old Church Road in that stretch. So we know that people are gonna try and choose alternative routes to take. So traffic, we already know, is gonna try and look at utilizing alternative routes. North Street is one of the main roadways, so if North Street was also under construction at the same time, it's gonna significantly impact, especially some of the smaller neighborhood roads that people would then try and utilize to get around both of the construction projects. So it's, we understand that's what we're trying to avoid. So.
Anybody else before I go back around? Okay, Ms. Tarkenton, then Ms. Faciliotis.
So, you brought up the traffic, and, first I want to thank you for working with a group of neighbors that presented at the First Selectmen's meeting to bring this project, back to the 1 year from a 2-year project. But, we also have to remember that this is a road with average traffic of 9,500 cars per day, which is on the state website. That's not, and then I guess the numbers on the, that's an average, are well into 11,000 or more cars per day. I could honestly say that it's going to be, I don't know what word to use here, but there needs to be a better plan than what we've heard so far in terms of not just allowing them to find another route, but to figure out how we're going to manage this amount of traffic not being able to go on North Street. I know summer is lighter. Again, it comes up with our average of 9,500 cars, but nevertheless, even on Old Church Road, where you plan to divert that traffic, there's a summer camp, a country day, and so forth and so on. So I think that additional thought needs to be put into this. But I want to come back to my concern for the neighbors and the watershed issues here. It was my understanding that additional approvals would be needed, at least when you went to inland wetlands, and I haven't heard about them being granted. FEMA, Army Corps of Engineers, are there other approvals from Connecticut Deep? And what approvals need to be granted to the town that are outside of the town's, you know, land use agencies, I'll use, but,
So the permitting for this process is a Army Corps general permit, and then the local land use agency, which is inland wetlands. We've received the, that land use, the inland wetlands permit already, and that the Army Corps permit is what's basically considered, I don't want to say completely a rubber stamp, but it's basically, falls under the general permit for what the Army Corps requires. So that permit is,
So when this project went to inland wetlands, I think it was with a draft document, but it's my memory that the sheet or whatever was on the upstream side and wasn't, it was sort of detached from the bridge area. Does that need to go back to inland wetlands now that the sheet has been moved to the downstream side and a whole different kind of dam is being structured?
we've checked with inland wetlands, and they do not require us to go back to them.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Vasiliotis? Vasiliotis.
I understand that there was a flood study that was done by CDM Smith in 2021, is that correct?
I'm not sure exactly which study you're referring to.
Well, I guess, or maybe it hasn't been done, I don't know. But I thought that there was something with CDM Smith that did something with the flooding issue in 2021, and I just was wondering where it is and why it hasn't been released, or whether a study has been done
So,
in that for that area.
so there was, after following Ida,
Right.
which happened in 2021, we had CDM start a study, and that's the study that I was referring to that we completed in March of 2023.
Has that been released to the public?
That
or-
has been released to the public.
Okay,
We
I
did
didn't-
have a
I couldn't
public-
find it on
We did
the-
have a public meeting. I believe it's on our website,
Is it? Okay.
so.
Okay, I couldn't find it, that's why, so, but then there's a lot I
It's
can't
considered,
find.
it's called the West Brothers Brook
Okay.
study, so if you
Okay.
look on the website, that's where you'd look for it.
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Moriarty, please.
I just want to identify some other issues while we're talking about this, to put the facts that I've heard on the table. We've been told that this bridge is in dire need of repair, that it cannot wait 3 years to be done after the Hillside project. We've been told that the conditions of the design of the bridge is not making conditions worse downstream or upstream, and you've provided additional information based on questioning last meeting, this meeting, and in between, that you believe that that is the case, and your not just believe, but your calculations support that. We've heard that severe storms, like a Hurricane Ida, cannot be designed around, that the design of this bridge and many other places in town cannot necessarily address the major concerns of a storm like that. And on one hand, part of the standard you're being held to here is you've planned for the future, right? You could have just replaced the bridge as it currently exists. Some of these questions would have still been raised, but you can say, we're just replacing the current bridge. But what you're doing is planning for the future and for trying to improve the watershed and the location of water, and you've come up with the design to address it. And it's a little bit of an unknown. I don't think we have another bridge designed that way, and maybe that's causing some of the upset here. But, you know, there are pros and cons with going forward on many different ways to address this issue. And so, to me, this project is looking forward. It's, you know, we are relying on DPW and the engineers that you hire and the designs you hire to follow through on meeting the criteria you've set out, which is the FEMA required, not making things worse for downstream or upstream neighbors and of this property. Is there anything that I've summarized, or what I think I've summarized as the key information I've pulled out of this, that is not correct?
No, I think that's a good summary, and I think, like you said, this is a little bit unique to what we normally do. Many times we will just put a bridge back where it was because of the amount of traffic on North Street and the fact that we do know that it has gone underwater before. One of the benefits of putting this raised structure in that then has the restriction underneath it where the water will still be able to go underneath it even in those bigger storms, allows that traffic will be able to move across North Street, and we won't have to close North Street, which is a major roadway. We have 84 bridges in town. We have to replace one typically a year, if not more. We've experienced all kinds of different ones. A few years back, we had Sound Beach Avenue. Sound Beach Avenue has 12,000 vehicles a day. That was closed for 3 months. We managed that one. We feel that we have a pretty good approach to handling these and knowing the way to manage these projects, and have done a decent job with them in the past, so.
Mr. Tarkington, one more question.
So, I'm sorry. So, you know, do you have any estimate of how long it would take to do this number of projects? What concerns me is the town continues to approve projects, we'll call it upstream from this project. And I think that's been exacerbating the water problems and the drainage into this neighborhood. Whether it's further up and it's residential and it's Meadowcroft and all the development that's occurred on the way down, because this is that watershed, or whether it's the, nonprofit, substantial development that has been constructed over the last several years, several major projects. So if there's going to be restrictions on the water leaving the neighborhood, how will the town demonstrate that it will be equally sensitive not to send additional water into this neighborhood? Because that's the other half of it. The town holds a responsibility here. It can't just, say, okay, it can't go downstream. It has to help this neighborhood and these neighbors who live in, their homes, or even some who no longer can live in their homes, manage within our community. So, I think there's a little bit more here that we need to think about, and how we're going to manage that side of it in the flow of water coming in, not just restricting the water from going out. Is there any thought to, what's going to happen on the above this neighborhood? I mean, it is a bowl. The water is coming in from many sides. There's no question about that. The problem is there's been tremendous amount of development above this bowl, and it's not all this neighborhood is a floodplain. I mean, I keep hearing this, but that's not true. But what is happening is the streets are being yellow taped in any of these major storms. And when you say you're not going to address certain types of storms, are those the same storms where these same roads are all now being yellow taped? Andrews, Hillside, Ridgebrook, Echo, et cetera, et cetera. Francine?
So when it comes to development, the town has a drainage manual, has had a very extensive drainage manual in place, the most recent one since 2012. And that drainage manual is very restrictive. We, as the town, are enforcing that drainage manual on any new developments, and that's what we do regardless whether it's in this watershed or any watershed in town. So we apply those requirements to all projects in town, and try to make sure that all their new developments are meeting that requirement.
But isn't it like, sort of like what we've talked about, the enforcement of the weight over the bridge? The developer's engineer presents the plan, and the developer's engineer signs off on it that it's in compliance. Is that, I mean, does that, do we have any other part that goes out to check to make sure that that really is?
There's a significant amount of projects that go through planning, and if they go through planning and zoning or they go through inland wetlands, they get a full detailed review. And any projects that are, most of the ones that you're referring to are a single-family redevelopment project, not necessarily a full, more major project.
Thank you.
Can we call the question?
I would think that's appropriate. Any objection to calling the question? Okay. We'll take a roll call vote on PW2. Start at the left end with Mr. Olchek.
I'd vote for yes.
Mr. Deschamps?
Yes.
Ms. Aurora?
Can you come back to me, Harry?
Okay. Mr. Sells?
Yes.
Ms. Vasiliotis?
No.
I'm a yes. Ms. Tarkington?
No.
Ms. Moriarty?
Yes.
Mr. Weisbrod?
Yes.
Ms. Jansen?
I'm going to side with the residents that still have an issue with the flooding. And I'm more comfortable if the engineering report were here for this decision, so I'm going to vote no.
Mr. Cowell?
Yes.
Mr. Alfano?
I'd also like to see the engineer's report, so I'm voting no.
Ms. Aurora?
I'm a no.
Okay, that passes 7-5-0. Okay, the next item before us is PW4,
So,
which is an additional appropriation.
yeah,
Read out the budget committee.
PW4 for Public Works, an additional appropriation for the North Street Bridge of $700,000. And I move that appropriate.
And I'll second.
So,
TLM. Okay, a report of the budget committee, please.
okay. So the committee considered an additional appropriation of $700,000 for the North Street Bridge project. This funding would cover increased costs related to traffic management, police staffing, and schedule compression to minimize the community impact. And that project and a requested appropriation passed the Budget Committee 3-1.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Do you have any preamble to talk to about this?
And not necessarily, unless you want me to give a little bit more summary, or so, I'm happy to.
Maybe we'll just move to discussion and questions. Ms. Aurora?
I just didn't get a chance to see the budget committee because it wasn't televised, I'm sorry. If you don't mind just giving a quick synopsis of what the funds will be used for, and also if we were not to fund this piece, what would not happen or could not happen?
Right, so basically, we broke this down into three pieces to total up to $700,000. $300,000 is approximately 10% of the estimated $3 million construction cost of the project. We anticipate, due to the accelerated timeframe, that costs may be slightly higher. So we figured we should put an additional 10% contingency on the project for that. Because of the next $200,000 is intended for police protection before and after the closure period. So during the prior design, we planned to put a temporary traffic signal up, which would allow traffic to go one direction at a time. Now, our plan is to have alternating one lane with police protection during the day, but then reopened at the end of the day for the first part of this project. Then in the middle of the project, we're gonna have a full closure of the road. And then at the end of the project, there's still gonna be work that's gonna need to be done. During their workday, they're gonna have alternating one lane with police directing traffic during that period, during those periods of time. So rather than having a signal out there for the 18-month duration, we're gonna need police protection in the front and the back end of the full closure period. So that's gonna, we are anticipating because of that, it's gonna be about a $200,000 cost for that police protection. The last $200,000 amount is, and we're anticipating about a 12-week closure period. That's what we're allowing them to do. We've looked at and worked with the state, looked at other projects across the state, and periodically they will do an incentive to shorten that time period. Because our time period overlaps the end of the public school and on the front end and the beginning of the public school year on the back end of the project, if we're able to shorten that time frame by up to 10 days, we can potentially avoid that school period on the beginning of the school year. So it's an incentive at basically $20,000 a day for up to 10 days, shortening the time frame. And so if they only shorten it one day out of the 12 weeks, they only would get $20,000. If they shortened it to full 10 days or more, they would get the full $200,000. So it's an incentive that's built into the contract that is based on what their completion date is. So that's what that funding would be there for. And so that's the other $200,000. So that totals up to $700,000.
Could you talk about the potential reimbursement of those components?
Correct. So the incentive piece is a piece that will not be reimbursed. The other two pieces, the other $500,000, should be reimbursed through the state's program that we're in for this bridge. So 500 of that 700 should be 100% reimbursable.
And then I believe if it goes beyond August 31st, there's a penalty?
Yeah. 40,000. Yeah, so if it, for every day after August 31st, which is after that 12-week period, we have a $40,000 per day penalty if the road isn't reopened. So that's a big incentive for them not to go past that period of time.
And that's reopened to two-lane traffic?
That's reopened to two-way traffic that they can then, allow two-way traffic all the time except for during the daytime when they're doing construction out there. So, yes.
Anybody else?
I just
Sorry, Mr. Alter.
wanted to clarify, as opposed to reimbursement, whatever money that we don't spend of the 200,000 is going to come back to the town, correct?
Correct, yes.
So that's a maximum, We're approving a maximum of 700.
Correct.
Which includes the 200.
And the reason we're asking for this now too is we know that we don't know what the bids are gonna come in at. So we want to be able to make put this out to bid, have the bids come back and be able to move into contracting right away. If we don't have the appropriation, we want to make sure that we can get to you guys and get to the RTM in a timely manner so that construction can start in the spring so that we can then make this all work. And with the contracting process, that's, we felt it was necessary now. Any funding out of this whole 700, or even if it goes below the 3 million that we already have appropriated, that we don't utilize, is gonna come back to the town regardless of, what that is. So it's not like we would use it somewhere else.
Ms. Tarkington?
So, as I think I said in the Budget Committee, I think the contract should be structured to be inclusive of the timeframes and the project bid accordingly on the front end. Therefore, I am not in support of the additional costs until the bids are received, on the proposed contract and, and see the breakdown of costs, and then only thereafter make a determination.
Yep, Mr. Cowell.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say that I love the structure of this $700,000 ask, this appropriation. I like the way that we've got some risk sharing here, and in fact, it's skewed in the town's favor. If somebody does we're paying for performance, but if they also fail, that the stick is, as you said, it's twice as big as the incentive on the other side, so it's kind of skewed in our favor. I like the idea that you have been responsive to the community in trying to come up with a way that we can accelerate this project so we can get it done fast. That really alleviates a lot of concerns. I live in this neighborhood. I'm up and down this road several times a day. And I can tell you that, it would be we were talking before about 18 months. You're now talking about getting that down to 3 months. And so I look at this as a very critical piece of that. I also think that, it gives this board a chance to kind of step up and also show that we're willing to be responsive to the community by appropriating capital in a positive way. And you've also told us that you've structured it so that we're going to get, 500 of the 700,000 actually comes back to us. So all in all, I look at this as kind of a win-win situation. So I'm pleased with this structure, and I think that it will really help to go a long way to alleviate the concerns of our community. So I'm in favor.
Ms. Moriarty?
I just want to point out the obvious. Clearly, from the prior vote, there are some members of this board that want more information before they go forward. But to state the obvious, without this additional 700,000, it really means that this project will not start this summer because there isn't sufficient time for the BET to act and the RTM to act in time to get completed contracts and completed paperwork in order for a contractor to start the work that they need to do before that June 7th or 10th date arrives. And I just want to make sure all my colleagues know that without the additional money, this project's not going forward this summer.
Anybody else? Mr. Sells?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in for one last word. I want to echo what Scott said about the design of this. I meant to say that earlier. I think it's a shrewd idea, and I commend the department on that. And I also want to say to my colleagues, I am very sensitive to the concerns that have been raised, particularly about the upstream flooding. I share those concerns. I don't live by a river, but I've had my house flooded, and I know how traumatic that is. I think it's incumbent on this board to work with DPW in the future to try to address those concerns. I think the concerns are real and they're legitimate. But I think you have to decouple that from the need for this bridge to be replaced. And I think both DPW and the state have been pretty emphatic about the public safety that's involved here. And so for all those reasons, and based on the remarks of Mr. Michael about the need for this additional 700, I'm going to support this.
Yes, Ms. Jensen.
I just wanted to highlight that, along with my colleagues, I do thank Public Works for responding to the community, but I certainly do not want to discount how much effort, time, and advocacy was done by the community for this to occur. This was no small feat for a reconsideration of the time frame to construct this bridge, and it was a great thing that DPW has modified the plan, and we have a reasonable financial model here. So I thank the community and its advocacy as well for this effort.
Ms. Vasiliotis?
I may be in the minority, but I don't think anyone disputes the need to replace this bridge. I think everybody agrees that it must be replaced. My problem with the 700,000 is we are paying an extra $200,000 basically to have whoever's awarded this contract, the person fulfill its obligations under the contract. I just have a problem with spending $200,000 of taxpayers' money extra to have somebody perform a contract that they sign and say that they're going to perform on. So I will not be supporting this fee structure. I don't think I think it's bad precedent for this town to start going down this road. And with respect to Ms. Moriarty's comments, we keep hearing the hammer that this will not get done if we don't do this tonight. Again, I'm going to be the skeptic and say that, look, even if it is delayed, there's still time before December and the approvals can be gotten and off you go to the races. I don't agree with the comments that have been made, and I will not be supporting the 700,000.
Anybody else? I would just point out that it's, a lot of times we hear that public sector doesn't adopt ideas from the private sector, but this sort of an arrangement is done in the private sector all the time. And I think it's,
And we're not the private sector.
I prefaced it by saying that we get complaints that we don't adopt good ideas from the private sector. And I think this is a good idea to be adopted.
I think it's a very dangerous territory, and we're going down a slippery slope.
I think it's time for the question. Anybody else got any discussion? Okay, so we'll take a record vote on this. I'll start from my right. Mr. Alfano?
Yes.
Mr. Kalb?
Yes.
Ms. Jansen?
Yes.
Mr. Weisbrod?
Yes.
Ms. Moriarty?
Yes.
Ms. Tarkington?
No.
I'm a yes. Ms. Vasiliotis?
No.
Mr. Selps?
Yes.
Ms. Aurora?
Yes.
Mr. Champs?
Yes.
And Mr. Olchek?
I would do this for my own home, and therefore, yes, I think this is a good idea.
Okay, that passes 10-0. Next before us is
Thank you.
FI1. Thank you both for being here this evening. Oh, yeah, we might as well do the condition. This was discussed at the Budget Committee, and I would like to move that release of the $700,000 be contingent upon publication of bids on the project and application for release to the BET from the DPW. A second from Mr. Alfano.
Okay, just point of order, I'm not sure I'll make, this should have been done when the appropriation was made. This particular item's not on our agenda for action as a separate item. It's not quite Robert's rules in the order that we've done it.
I'm not sure it was on the agenda for the Budget
Well,
Committee either.
no, it should have been.
But we do these all the time.
It should have been an amendment to the appropriation.
Yeah,
Okay, forgive me for not knowing proper procedure, but we do it all the time in our budget stuff without it being on the agenda. We had conditions all the time.
You want to add this to the agenda since we separated it out?
I'm going to vote against your amendment, but I'm very much in support of your putting it on the agenda for the vote. So I think with a 2/3 vote, we can proceed, and I think you can just ask for a voice vote. I don't see any opposition.
Is there any objection to taking this up so we can vote on it as an addition? There's no, all right, so we'll take this up.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the procedure, because it seems to me that the motion to amend should have been made and discussed and voted on first, and then we would have voted on whether or not, this item was amended, and then we would have voted on the item as amended. But we've already passed the appropriation, so now I'm not sure that we can actually vote on the amendment, because then even if let's suppose we pass the amendment, then some people, you could say, may not have actually voted for the item, would have passed the item to begin with. So I just feel like we're taking it out of order. I'm not sure we
Well,
can go to the amendment now that we've already made the appropriation.
Add it to the
One way
agenda.
to do it would be to reconsider the previous item.
You can't do that because you've already called it. I don't think you can do that.
No, we can reconsider a vote if you're in the affirmative.
What, after you've already called it, you can?
Yeah. I mean, if you want, I'll
I think we just, why don't you call a vote for the added to the agenda, and this time just call the people. And Mr. Culp will vote against it, I guess.
well, he's making a different point, Leslie.
I know.
I mean,
Reconsider the item. Go
What?
back and redo it. So
all right,
reconsider
I
the
move to
vote.
reconsider PW4 for the purposes of adding the condition. Do I have a second?
I'll-
Second from Mr. Alfano. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Well, and 2 no votes.
2 no votes. So that's 10-0.
Where the two no votes.
Who's the other no vote besides you?
Leslie Tarkington.
Are you a no vote?
Well, no, because
Karen, so-
she's not on the prevailing side, so she can't vote. So it's 10-0.
She can't make the motion. She could vote.
I think you can vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, she can vote on it.
I think I can vote on it.
So you're voting in favor?
I'll vote in favor of it.
Okay, so it's 11,
So, no, I'll vote in favor if that's what you're saying, but I don't agree with that one.
all right, it's 12-0. So now I move that we add a condition to PW4. I'll read it again. Release of $700,000 contingent upon publication of bids on the project and application for release to the BET from DPW. Could I have a second, please?
Don't we have to separate the condition? Vote the condition and then
No, you can.
vote to amend?
One way to do it is to move the additional appropriation and then make a motion to
To
amend
amend that.
the appropriation to add the
haven't
condition.
appropriated anything yet.
So you
Okay.
lump together. So
Yes.
if you withdraw your motion, I'll make a motion to approve PW for additional appropriation of
Okay, agreed.
$700,000.
And now you make your
I
motion.
need a second for that. I'll second it.
And then you make your motion.
And then I move the addition of the condition as I've read a couple of times. If you need it, I'll read it again. Hearing no request. Please read it again. Okay. Release of $700,000 contingent upon publication of bids on the project and application for release to the BET from DPW. So if we need discussion on that, I would say that, this is my idea. It actually was prompted by a discussion with Jim Michael that said if you wanted to condition it, it would be all right with him. And I think it's a signal to the market that we're paying attention to this, that we're scrutinizing the additional money. I think it helps in the bid process to keep the bids down. And I don't see any downside in having this condition, but I'm welcome to hear any discussion.
Here,
Ms. O'Rourke?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to understand what we're doing here. So this is just for the additional 700K?
Correct.
Right, which is 200,000 of that is internal police protection, 200,000 is the incentive. So you're really only at 300,000 is what are we getting?
Well, it's the whole $700,000 because
But there's no real bid on the 200,000 incentive, right? There's no bid on the police protection, that's internal, right? That's at cost, I'm assuming?
well, it's
The bid is on the
blue
3
payroll,
million.
it's side jobs.
I think it would have been a good idea to put this condition on the 3 million, if anything, but I'm not clear why we need it for.
We can't recondition the 3 million.
I'm not asking to condition it, I'm just saying that the condition for the bid, I think would make more sense on the actual construction, not the bells and whistles that are going on here. If everyone wants to do this, that's fine, but I just don't understand the purpose of it.
Well,
I'm happy to do it if everybody is
So wouldn't it
wanting
come back
this.
after the construction bids
Yes.
come in? It will come back and we get to see it.
Yes.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
See, I'm sorry, what? What are we?
I'm sorry. I did say to Harry, I think what happened, it's all right if I speak to her?
Yes, please.
when, it means that when the contract comes in, if they need these additional funds, they'll come back to the BET, go through the costs and so forth of what the proposed bids are, and then request the release of these
So only-
700,000 or 500,000, whatever they need at that point in time.
So only, just to be clear, it looks like, it looks like there has been a conversation on this and just everyone's not privy to it, which is why there's questions. I just want to
It was
understand
passed
what's
at the
going on.
Budget Committee, that's all.
Yeah, I'm sorry, and like I
Yeah.
said, that was not televised, so I didn't get to follow that conversation. So if the bid is 3.3, that's when they come back. If it's 2.9, they're not coming back, right? Because the 3 million's already approved. So you're just saying if it goes above and beyond the 3, you'd like them to come back and present the bids? Is that what's going on?
Yeah,
Between 3 and 3.3?
I think that's one way to look at it.
Is there any other way to look at it?
Well, I mean, I think it's a given that it's going to come in above 3.
Why is that? I mean, you should have said, let's give a signal to the market that we would like it to come in at 2.1. But
sure, of
if you
course,
say it's going to come in at a 3, all right, well.
I
let's
have
just
no
vote.
idea,
It's fine.
Nisha. I have no idea. I'm just trying to add more checks and balances to the whole thing, is what I'm trying to accomplish. So, anybody else? Okay, I guess we need a roll call vote on this. So on adding the condition to PW4, Mr. Alfano,
Yes.
Mr. Cal,
No.
Ms. Jansen,
No.
Mr. Weisbrod,
No.
Ms. Moriarty,
I'm going to vote no.
Ms. Tarkington,
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Karen, Ms. Fessler,
Ms. Karen? Yes.
I'm discombobulated tonight. Mr. Selves,
Or Mr. Steve, as the case may be. No.
Ms. Aurora,
Yeah, Ms. Nisha is a no also.
Mr. Deschamps,
No.
and Mr. Olczak.
No.
Okay, that fails. I believe I counted 3 yes votes.
No, 4.
4. I'm sorry.
Who was the fourth?
Well, wait a minute.
Alfano.
No, Mr. Alfano was a yes, weren't you?
Fernando was a
I
yes.
counted him as a yes.
Yes. So there's 4.
So there was you, myself,
And me.
and Tarkington.
And
Yep,
Alfano.
Alfano.
and Alfano. Okay.
4.
So it fails 4 in favor, 8 opposed.
So now you got to get back to the original.
Okay, we have before us PW4 with no condition. So I'll take another roll call, Mr. Alfano. This is on the underlying item itself,
To the original
the $700,000 appropriation.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Cal,
Yes.
Ms. Jansen,
Yes.
Mr. Weisbrod,
Yes.
Ms. Moriarty,
Yes.
Ms. Tarkington.
No.
I'm a yes. Ms.
No.
Fasleotis is a no. Mr. Selps is a yes. Correct?
Yes,
Sorry.
yes.
Ms.
You were
Aurora is a
voting- I
yes.
thought you were voting for me, Harry.
Mr. Deschamps?
And I'm still a yes.
Yes and yes on the left hand. So that is, again, a 10-0 vote. Okay. So FI2, would you report on the Budget Committee, please? Move the item.
Yes, this item, FI2, is the bonding resolution to accompany the additional $700,000 for the project. And this was approved, just a second here.
I think it was 400.
I think it was 400. I think this was approved 400. That's what I have.
Yes, but I have a question, only because the dollar amount, if this, and we did so we have a bonding appropriation for the 3 million, but the project is 100% state funded. And the 700,000, we know that 200,000 would not be, I shouldn't say 100% of eligible expenses, so there may be some residual expenses. Of the 700,000, we're expecting the incentive money not to be reimbursed, but the rest of it will be. So it's a much smaller amount. And we did just go through this with the Finance Committee on what the state of our capital non-recurring fund is. My guess is your recommendation is we approve bonding to keep the entire project
Yes,
in one fund. But to recognize that it may be a small dollar amount from this particular piece. Is that correct?
yes.
Talk myself.
Go ahead.
But I think once a project is put on the books, it's really fungible. They don't necessarily separate when they come in for the money, the appropriations, they don't separate.
No, but their accounting system does keep projects.
This will have two funding sources, one the bonding and one
Right.
uh,
The grant.
the grant, yes.
Okay, any other discussion? I need a motion to, Mr. Selps moves it,
I second.
Mr. Weisbrod seconds. Any further discussion? What? We had to have it moved and seconded.
I already moved it.
No, you didn't. You reported in the Budget Committee. You didn't actually move it. So Mr. Selps is,
You don't report before you move it. I moved the item. There was no report. Okay.
okay, I didn't hear it, so. Is there any further discussion on the item? Is there any objection to unanimous consent? No objection. This is approved 1200. Okay, now we get to FI 3, which was added to the agenda earlier.
So I'll make the motion to approve the use of $32,000 from the BET discretionary funds for a search firm, to hire a search firm.
And I'll second that. I will, explain that this came up this morning, which is why it was added to the agenda. What this is the search committee, has been talking about having a search firm. We had a presentation to us from one of the very few firms that does this in the municipal arena, and especially on this coast. And we've asked for a proposal, which I understand from the HR department will be delivered to us on Wednesday. We do know that that firm has a flat fee of $29,500, plus any expenses, hence the $32,000 number. There's no decision to hire. It just is trying to expedite a process to replace our beloved controller, Mr. Minarski, and move things along in an expeditious fashion. So I think there would be a lot more discussion among members of the BET should the committee decide to engage a firm. So that's the background on this. Ms. Tarkington.
So I'd just like to comment that we need to make one correction to this. It's really the Board of Estimate and Taxation, not the Board of Education.
Oh, yes.
But they have a lot of money over there. Maybe we should charge them. And they use the Finance Department a lot.
Okay, good catch, Leslie. Thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on this? Ms. Aurora?
I'm sorry, I just learned about this one a short while ago, as you know. I'm not excited about the process of how we're adding this to the agenda, and in the sense that, I think there are certain members of, especially the HR committee, which was left out of this discussion. But putting that aside for one moment, can you just share a little bit more information about the search firm? Have we ever hired them as a town? How much did we pay them in the past? And if we hired them before, what position did we utilize them for?
This is a firm that was brought to our attention by the HR department. It has been used before. I believe it was for, I'm sorry?
HR. Mary's position.
Oh, Mary's position was utilized for,
Mary Pepe,
Mary,
her,
when Mary
Okay.
Pepe was hired.
okay.
So there is experience with it.
So that was a long time ago, right? Because she's been with the firm.
8 years?
Hasn't she been with the town for a very long time?
8 years?
8 years?
Karen thinks it's longer than that.
So the last time this firm was used was eight plus years ago, or is that
Yeah,
what we're saying?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. I think, it's unusual that, in my mind, in my experience, that a search firm charges a flat fee as a percentage of the anticipated salary. It's pretty modest. I know that the firm that Nathaniel Willula was looking to use for the finance director position was looking to charge 1/3 of the salary. This is certainly less than that, less than 15% of the salary. So it's a fairly low-cost option. Hopefully, it's a good option, but no decision has been taken on that. And as I say, we'll get a proposal and know a lot more later this week. Ms. Fasciotis.
Yeah, I guess my question is, where did the 32,000 come from if we don't have a proposal yet? And the second thing that you said is that no decision has been made. Who would be making the decision once we allocate the funds? Will it be coming back to the BET, or will we just be allocating the funds and letting whatever committee has been established decide? I think this is a reverse process of how we normally do. We normally get a proposal in, and then we allocate the funds based on the proposal. We've had, for example, the M&C compensation come before us, and we haven't allocated monies because we don't have a proposal yet from any outside funds, and therefore the committee was loath to recommend. So I guess I'm trying to understand what the process is and how the 32,000 was derived, and if we don't have a proposal, and we're expecting the proposal on Wednesday.
Well, I intend to consult with all members of my caucus on this. I think it's important to move it forward because we've got a relatively short time frame here. If we delay this to December, it just delays the whole process. So I think it's
I don't think my
important to move
question was,
forward.
I don't think my question was answered. We've made a decision to allocate 32,000. How do we know that that's going to be sufficient? Who's made the decision for the 32,000 if we don't have a proposal?
If it's insufficient, we would have to come back to the BET, of course.
Well, my point exactly. So why don't we wait for the proposal and then
We
decide?
know what the cost of the proposal will be.
Well, you're saying one thing, but then you said another thing. So I'm trying to understand how you know that it's going to be 32,000.
Because they told us. They told us it's 29.5 plus expenses.
Excuse me, Harry, can I just make a quick point?
Of course.
So I just want to say, I agree with Harry on this issue that there's risk on both sides. There's risk in moving forward. We don't have all the information. But in my view, there's more risk in not moving forward. So I appreciate, Karen, all your comments, but there's asymmetry here. There's asymmetrical risk, and if we constantly stick our heads in the sand and say, well, we need more information, we got to do this, we got to do that, then we're not addressing the problem before us, and we're not making any progress. So I just want to say I'm in support of Harry's position, and I'm in support of moving forward on this.
My only point is that we are writing basically a blank check for a proposal that we have not seen.
Mr. Weisbrod.
I do think time is of the essence here. Our beloved, indeed beloved, controller has indicated that he would be leaving, I believe, in March. It's in the public domain.
No, January 31st.
Oh, sorry, January 31st. I stand corrected. And so, the clock is ticking. There's no role more important than finding a successor that is able to fill the shoes of Mr. Minarski. And so the motion before us to appropriate some money to make sure that that search is as far and wide and gives us the best talent we can possibly hope to assess. There is time is of the essence because, December is a dead month. January is going to come and go. And this next meeting that we have is not going to be for another month. So I see no point in delaying. I think that the chairman is judicious and smart to present this, and I'm totally in favor.
Mr. Kalb.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I respect the points made by my colleagues here about the concern about the procedure, and I don't know about the exact process, but one thing I do know is that just from a governance perspective, it's very good for us for a position like this to make sure that we have, it's like having outside counsel. It protects the town in case there's other people start to inquire what's going on, how did you do this? So if you have an outside, it professionalizes the process. We have an outside expert. And it potentially also widens the footprint, right, of our search so that we can make sure that we're potentially reaching a wider talent pool than may be available to us just through our own advertising mechanisms. So overall, I understand what you're saying about process, but I do think it's a good idea. And I've not seen a flat fee before on this kind of thing, so it seems to me it's a very reasonable cost. But overall, I think it's important for us, just from, as I said, a governance point of view, to have this kind of a service for this process.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yep, Ms. Aurora?
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Self should go first.
I've had the experience of working on many, many executive searches, not in the public sector, but in the private sector many, many times. First off, a flat fee is extremely unusual. They're usually comp-based. And secondly, this fee for a search of this magnitude, based on the experience of my prior searches, is very, very fair. I'm not dismissing the things that Ms. Vasiliotis has raised, but I also take heed of what Mr. Weisbrot and others have said. We need to find a replacement for our beloved controller sooner rather than later. And it seems to me that given the relatively modest amount of money that's at stake here, while I'm not disregarding her views, we just need to get on with it.
I think, Mr. Deschamps, you had your hand up? Ms. Aurora, then?
First of all, I think this is, the idea of hiring a search firm for this position is a good one, and I think the cost also seems to be quite reasonable for all the issues addressed. I think my concerns really are that we are setting a precedent that, I didn't hear about this until maybe an hour ago, that this was even being added to the agenda. So the whole idea that a few members of this board, have already decided on a vendor, we even have a rough cost of what that's going to look like. Again, the vendor's probably fine, the cost is probably fine. Just sets a bad precedent that in the future, if the BET wants to hire, I know we've had many, many discussions on hiring consultants or, using BAT funds or, BET funds allocated to us to do things. I think just it's a bad precedent that a few members can decide we need to move forward with the project, go ahead and even have a preliminary discussion with the vendor, get some preliminary costs, and then come back for an approval. I think, had we had this discussion even in October, just as a discussion, hey, we knew Pete was retiring, do we want to hire a search firm? Does it sound like a good idea? I think it would have been fine. It looks like it's going to pass tonight. It looks like there is enough support for it. But I just think the precedent is so poor in terms of how the process was followed to get us to where we are. So I'm just not going to support it on that process alone, although I do agree with everyone here that I think we do need to I think it's not a bad idea, rather, to hire a search firm, and the cost seems to be reasonable
Thank
for
you.
what we're doing.
Ms. Moriarty?
No, I just wanted to indicate to my fellow BET members, clearly from the beginning, Harry and I have taken the lead on the search as the leadership of the Democratic and the Republican caucuses. But I know that we have kept people informed. We expected to get the proposal this morning, so it could have been distributed before today's meeting. I would like to assure people that if this proposal comes in and it doesn't seem like they can adequately supply what we need, I don't think we'd move forward, and maybe then we have to get have a special meeting because we may solicit an additional proposal. But this isn't an attempt to do things without sharing information and without input.
Ms. Vasiliotis?
Yeah, I'm just going to echo again what Ms. Aurora stated, is that this is very bad precedent for this board. And, I don't have any issue with hiring a search firm. I think that, it should have been raised a lot earlier when the budget committee basically now, was handling the search. And I just think that, at the 11th hour, now everybody's panicking because, oh my gosh, our beloved comptroller is leaving in January. I don't think that there's been a lot of thought throughout this process, and I am not going to be supporting it for those reasons.
Anybody else? Mr. Weisbrod?
So I actually agree that it would have been better to present this in October, for that matter, September. There's no doubt about it. As far as the precedent is concerned, I don't see any precedent here at all. There's no precedent in this vote. And what I'm hearing is everybody saying, it's a great idea, we should get a search firm. But I don't like the precedent, or we should have done it. Well, here we are. We're in November, almost December, and time is of the essence. And if people don't want to do it now, then I think we should call a special meeting to approve this. But I don't know what's going to be new at the special meeting that we don't know now. I don't disagree that it would have been better to present this in October or earlier even, but we didn't. It wasn't done. So the point being, there's no opposition to the substance. I'm not hearing anybody saying it's a bad idea. And so I think in this case, it makes sense. The two chairs have discussed this. I trust them. I trust them both in this instance, and I think it'll move our process forward. And it's so critical, comes the budget season, that we have the most capable person in place to help us through that process.
Ms. Vasiliotis?
Look, again, it's not the issue of whether or not we hire a search firm, but again, without a proposal, I don't know if this is the search firm we want to hire, flat fee or not. I like the idea of a special meeting if we have to after seeing the proposal. Again, I'm looking at procedure. I'm looking at, when you say that there's no precedent, of course there's precedent that you're setting here today. You are approving monies without knowing what the full proposal is. It's a flat fee. We've been told, I don't know who told you, 29.5. Again, I don't know what I'm approving at 32,000, so I cannot support it.
All right, seeing no other hands, I'll call for a vote. Mr. Olczak?
Yes.
Mr. Deschamps?
Yes.
Ms. Aurora?
I'm a no.
Mr. Selps?
I'm a yes.
Ms. Vasiliotis?
And yes, I'm a no.
I'm a yes. Ms. Tarkington?
Yes.
Ms. Moriarty?
Yes.
Mr. Weisbrod?
Yes.
Ms. Jansen?
No.
Mr. Kalb?
Yes.
Mr. Alfano?
No.
1, 2, 3, 4 noes. So that passes 8-4-0. Okay. We'll move on to the Comptroller's report, please.
Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, BET members. I will start with the front page, the annual audit. The good news is we're ahead of schedule. As you know, in the last two audits, year ending 22 and 23, they were held up for a variety of reasons. In 22, it was the Nathaniel Witherall issue and the implementation of Governmental Accounting Standards Board 87. And last year was an implementation of Governmental Accounting Standards Board 96. Better news is that we received the GFOA's, the Governmental Finance Officers Association Certificate of Achievement, which basically means that the document that you all approve each year, the ACFR, the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, meets standards that everybody must comply with across North America and Canada. Also happy to report that this potentially could have slowed up the audit, so it's great that we've got it this early. They usually take 9 months. This one took about 7 months. We closed the books last April, so it was about a 7th month. So crossing my fingers, we're ahead of schedule, and let's hope, the goal is to get the audit out by December 31st of this year. Moving on to the annual capital projects financing, there is a spike. The one-year notes are going from 75 million to 120 million. And as listed in the report, the obvious is Kentro Middle School, which is probably 45 million of that. We went from about 5,690,000 borrowing this year to $50 million. There's the Coscob pump station for 5 million, which will go up to 20 million right after that. And then there's the Old Greenwich elementary school renovation, which is 43 million in the books, but we're going to put 5 million up for this, and then we'll get more accurate cash flows. The credit reviews are going to be the week of the 6th. Of course, you are all going to be invited to attend. It's done remotely. And then the borrowing will be the Thursday on January 23rd. I spoke with the financial advisor today, Mr. Bill Lindsay from Unistat, and asked, what do you think? And he said he actually went to market last week. There's a town called Islip, New York. I've never heard of it, but I think it exists.
It's a well-known town.
Where is it? Is it Westchester County or somewhere?
No, it's on Long Island.
Long Island, okay.
Yeah.
MacArthur
Field.
They actually did a 5-year, which is rare. We're not the only ones. So he said they got 2.4, and we got 2.42 a year ago. He said, however, this month was very volatile because of the election. Obviously, you could see the volatility in the stock market where it went up and down. And we're not making predictions, but I'm going to say that we're going to be pretty close to the 242 we got a year this year for last fiscal year's borrowing. So that's where we are on the financing. And then finally, I hope I am not going into your space. I'm going to talk about the retirement board meeting this morning.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. We had a retirement board meeting this morning, a special meeting. We voted on section 189 proposed amendment to change the charter to allow an individual who retires subsequent to July 1st a retiree who takes another job. It wouldn't be like the controller coming back and taking the controller or the budget director coming back. It's another job. We voted 4-1 to allow people, former employees who are retirees, to come back in a different position than their former position without hurting their retirement. So that's, in essence, double dipping. The reason I'm bringing it up at this meeting is it's going to be in your court. And the chairman sent out an extensive package on what's behind it. It's controversial, but the BET will probably get that's why I didn't want to, I think you were going to report this, Mr. Chairman. You're going to get a first read December 12th, and you're going to have the ability to up or down vote for a change to the charter. I'll open it up to any other questions in the controller's report.
Did you have a chance to talk to Mary Pepe about the deputy budget assistant position and the results of her meeting this afternoon?
Roland is handling that.
Roland, did you
I
get
don't
a
want to
chance
speak
to
for
talk to
Roland.
Mary Pepe?
She was going to meet with union representatives this afternoon. I didn't hear back the results of that. I'm going to meet with Mary Pepe tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock.
Okay, well, she let me know that that position, Adam's former position, has been approved for an MC. So, Mr. Deschamps.
I just want to congratulate you and your team for something you did not mention publicly, but it's in your report, and that is the receiving of the Certificate of Achievement of Excellence from the GFOA.
Thank you.
And it's a job well done. As a certified public accountant myself, I know that essentially what that means is you've gone above and beyond the standards of GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles, and that's a credit to you, Roland, and your entire team. And let it be a marker for our recruitment of a new comptroller to understand the excellent work that you have done, the ground that you have laid, and I hope it's a indication of getting some real quality candidates in to take over your leadership. Thanks for that great work.
You're welcome, and we appreciate the comment.
Anybody else? I'll take a motion to accept the comptroller's report. Moved by Ms. Tarkington.
I'll second.
Seconded by Ms. Moriarty. Without objection, that's approved 1200. Treasurer's report, please.
I have two comments on the Treasury report. In the capital non-recurrent, Ms. Moriarty asked last week about the balance in the capital non-recurrent. He came up with the issue of changing from a bonding of a fire vehicle. You can see that the number is 4.6. You have to subtract 2 million from that, which is going to be transferred, which was part of the budget process. So to answer your question more accurately, it's $4.6 million. And then there was a second one I was going to, the risk fund. You all approved a settlement for about a million and change. So the 2083 that you see before you at balance is dropping down to 500,000 or 600,000. So that's my comments on the Treasurer's report.
Any questions, discussion? Mr. Cowell.
Yeah, Pete, over time in the past, what's been the average level of that risk fund?
The average level, there's two ways to answer that. We used to historically try to restore it to $3 million, which would be, I'm sorry? Yeah.
We would top it up to 3 million?
The way we would do it, as part of the annual audit, I meet with John Wayne Fox previously and Barbara Schellenberg around the first week of December. This year is going to be earlier in November, and we go over all the claims. And there's the CPA criteria about liability. You have to be able to say if it's probable, you're going to win or lose. If you lose, you have to be able to estimate it. And we would put all of them in, go through every single one of them. There's like 50 of them. And we would come up with a number. And it was usually around 3 million. And the previous policy was to go back to the 3 million. The fund has been going gradually down for a number of years. So it's hard to answer because it's been declining from 3 down to 2 to about $500,000 or $600,000. However, there's been a number of work done by a number of BET members who've gone to the town attorney, Barbara Schellenberg, and it's been projected or presented or estimated that there's nothing out there that could substantially make this fund go to zero in the near future. But if you're looking at a budgetary answer, you have to go out 18 months, and who knows what's going to happen in the next 18 months. You'll never know if you're going to get another case by the poor gentleman that you settled the case for now. But I don't think I'm answering your question because it's basically been a declining balance, and I don't know the average if you take it out over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years.
Any other questions on the regard to the treasurers? If not, I'll take a motion to accept.
So moved. We accept the Treasurer's report?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, that's accepted 1200. I've asked Mr. Alfano to give a quick report of the audit committee the other day since not everybody was there and it was fairly significant. So Mr. Alfano.
Sure. Actually, 7 of the BET members were there. Earlier this year, the town finance commenced an audit of grants in both the Greenwich Public Schools and Department of Public Works. This audit was conducted by Clifton Larson Allen, the town's internal auditors. They were engaged to provide audit services related to the processes and controls associated with management of all operating and capital grants for the town. This review included an assessment of the procedures around grant acceptance, management, and tracking, as well as reporting requirements and grant expenditure compliance. Due to the lack of accountable personnel in the Greenwich Public Schools to support the audit, the 2 audits were divided. CLA has been hired to assist GPS in both the operations of grant management, and a second function for CLA is to conduct the external audit of the last 2 years. 2 letters of engagement describe the distinct and separate functions. Eventually, GPS decided to engage another department of CLA to conduct a review of the grants to support the audit. This is ongoing. Unfortunately, GPS will not be including the capital part of the audit, school construction grants, that represent millions in capital projects. The DPW portion of the audit is still in draft form, primarily due to lack of DPW management responses to the auditors, which is customary but not ideal. While the DPW audits were rated satisfactory by CLA, the audit highlighted significant deficiencies in policy and procedures and documentation at all stages of grant process. The report also states that generic grant procedures for the town are not formalized. There is no single dedicated grants management person that manages and oversees grant compliance townwide. We are specifically missing the managing, monitoring, reporting, and closeout steps of the life cycle for each grant. This is an ongoing matter and will be an area of intense scrutiny by the audit committee for the foreseeable future. Securing a grant is commendable, but failing to ensure the timely receipt of funds is unacceptable. CLA recommended both department heads from the town and GPS attend the next BET audit meeting to discuss a specific example of their respective current grant process.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Mr. Weisbrot?
David, have you circulated that, what you just read to the BET?
I have not.
Could
Be
you?
happy to, absolutely.
Thank you very much. And I was not at the audit committee, but based on what you just read, why did the auditors conclude that the audit was satisfactory? It was that you said the outcome was satisfactory.
Right,
Why?
For DPW only.
right. Just DPW,
And the other one is still in process?
still in process.
Got it, thanks.
Anything else? Mr. Selps?
Yeah, as a member of the audit committee, I attended the meeting last week, and I think the things that Mr. Alfano has adverted to raised concern in all the members of the audit committee. I mean, essentially, if you sort of parse through it, what they identified were lack of internal controls over our grants process, and it was disturbing to me. I'm sure it was disturbing to my colleagues, and I agree with Mr. Alfano. This is something that the audit committee needs to really focus on during the next year.
Thank you. Ms. Aurora?
Just a quick question, David, if you have the answer, Mr. Alfano, if you have the answer, would you happen to know what the amounts are, like what's the total amount of grants that we get per annum?
Don't have that answer.
That was part of the audit? Was that part of the?
I didn't read it. I didn't read that amount in the
Oh,
audit
okay,
report.
gotcha.
No.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Alfano. There are no liaison reports that I know of. Under special project team reports, I had hoped to have this evening, but didn't get it in time. The schedule of bidding and opening of bids for the Central Middle School. I will be getting that at tomorrow morning's 8 o'clock meeting. If anybody wants to Zoom in, you can. It's here in the town hall meeting room, and I will feed that out to the BET once I get it, so we all know what the schedule is for CMS. In regard to Julian Curtis, we received 3 bids, and we're in the process of evaluating them. And at Friday's meeting at 7:45, we expect to choose one of those and proceed. So that's the status on that. Mr. Subs, you sent around a good report on Old Greenwich. You have anything to add?
Yeah, I just want to, a couple of you have said that the numbers were confusing, so I want to give a little bit of overview, and with note to the hour, I'm going to try to keep this brief. What were circulated was a summary of the estimates that we got from Don's Construction Company, who is our construction manager. That's based on construction drawings that are 97% complete. The building committee will be going to the Board of Ed on Thursday of this week, asking for an increase in the budget of a total of $1.965 million. And the causes for this are really a couple of things. One, in particular, the information that we're getting from the market is the price for HVAC equipment is significantly higher than what we've been previously expected, and it's just one of those secular things that happens in the market. In addition to that, the state DEP is requiring that we actually raise the new addition to Old Greenwich School, which, as you may remember from the prior discussions, is the area in the back. That's partially in a floodplain, and so they're requiring us to raise that 11 inches beyond where the additional drawings had it. So that adds another $61,000. The bottom line, though, because I know my colleagues are interested in the bottom line, is that assuming that the BOE approves the budget that we'll be taking to them on Thursday night, that we'll come back to this board and ask for an additional contingency funding of $1.965 million. Now, a little bit of history. You'll remember when we approved this budget last spring that the building committee had asked for $1.265 million as additional contingency, which this board did not approve. And so what the building committee will really be asking for is a net increase of $700,000 over what we had asked for earlier this spring. Assuming that the Board of Education approves this higher number on Thursday, Mr. Waters will make another full presentation to the board, to the Budget Committee first before he comes back and asks for consideration of this additional amount at the December meeting. I think, again, with respect for the hour, I'm not going to go into the numbers more deeply. I'm happy to talk to any of you who want to talk about it offline, but you will get a very full report from Mr. Waters, and I've talked to him about that. And one of the things I talked to him about is making sure that we can account for the reimbursement process from the state to make sure that we're on top of that. So that is my report, Mr. Fisher.
Thank you. I think that gets us to item number 8. There is no old business, there's no new business, so item 11 is the approval of the minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes, October 29th and October 21st, which we will take up separately. Perhaps we'll take up the easier one first, October 21. If I could have a motion to approve the minutes of October 21st.
So moved.
Mr. Alfano moves. Could I have a second? Mr. Selp seconds. Is there any discussion on the October 21 minutes? Seeing none, any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, there's 12-0-0 for the October 21st minutes. Thank you. Could I have a motion to approve the October 29th minutes, which were recirculated today and are put on your desk?
So moved.
Mr. Alfano moves. And Leslie Tarkington seconds. So that is before us discussion. Ms. Moriarty.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to amend, and that is to remove the paragraph on page 3. It's the third from the bottom, which is more a description of a process discussion, which is not typically in our meetings. So I would like that paragraph that starts, Mr. Fisher asked how many more amendments would be put forth. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved by Ms. Moriarty, seconded by Mr. Selps to remove the paragraph, third paragraph from the bottom of the third page of the minutes, commencing with my name, Mr. Fisher asked.
And just to explain further, as I said, I don't think this is in keeping with the standards that we usually have for our minutes and reporting on our meetings.
Any other discussion? Mr. Alfano.
Are they accurate, Ms. Moriarty? Is the statement accurate?
Well, the answer, yes, the statement is accurate, but you can expect a lot more of these kinds of paragraphs interjected into future minutes if you continue to keep this kind of conversation in there. It is a level of process. It is not a substantive factor.
Anybody else? I think we'll probably take a record vote on this. So the vote is on whether to delete that paragraph. Mr. Alfano?
No.
Mr. Selps? Or Mr. Cal?
Yes.
Ms. Jansen?
No.
Mr. Weisbrod?
Yes.
Ms. Moriarty?
Yes.
Ms. Tarkenton?
No.
I'm a no. Ms. Vasiliotis?
No.
Mr. Selps?
Yes.
Ms. Aurora?
No.
Yes?
I said no.
Oh, you said no, I'm sorry. That's why I was clarifying. Mr. Deschamps?
Yes.
And Mr. Olczak?
Yes.
Okay, that's a 6-6 vote, so the motion fails. Any other motions? So the minutes themselves are before us. I suppose we should take a record vote on that also. So I'll start with Mr. Olczak.
Yes.
Mr. Deschamps?
Yes.
Ms. Aurora?
Yes.
Mr. Selps?
No.
Ms. Vasiliotis?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Tarkenton?
Yes.
Ms. Moriarty?
No.
Mr. Weisbrod?
Yes.
Ms. Jansen?
Yes.
Mr. Cal?
Yes.
And Mr. Alfano?
Yes.
So that passes 10-0. Okay, I don't really have any prepared remarks on the chair. I, just note again that, Wednesday, we're now going to learn a lot more about the search firm, and I intend to consult with my colleagues. I don't know if Ms. Moriarty intends to do the same, but,
Everyone here's your colleague.
I'm sorry?
But everybody here's your colleague. We're all BET members.
Okay. Touche. So on that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. So
Second.
moved by Mr. Selps,
Seconded.
seconded by Mr. Alfano, I believe. Without objection, we are adjourned at 8:31.